Well, here we are back. Happy Markcast Monday. I was just talking Jason before we got on. Good weekend. I guess if you're a Commanders fan, I don't know. I mean, we took the Eagles here to overtime. I'll take that as a win. We got the Bears coming up this week, but we can talk Swifties today if we want. I think everyone's a little tired of that. We'll be talking some damn Canadian football here, gentlemen. How are we doing? Evan back on the program. Evan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I know I missed last week, unfortunately, but we're back now. Had a couple, good games this weekend. I actually saw a couple teams, clinch playoff spots, which is always fun, always exciting. So, happy to dive into that here.
Yeah, the Mariners can no longer break my heart. Officially eliminated. We're done. We're done. They're out. It's Kraken season all the time. We have a preseason again tonight. We'll be going to, and then like I said, Commanders Thursday night football. I feel bullish on that right now. So that to me, that's the end of the season if we can't do that. Jason, your Bills, like you said, dice the fish here, putting up tremendous points. How are you feeling? Ticats clinched right as well. We're officially playoff bound.
Yep, great football weekend for me. And I mean, one thing I wanted to bring up to start was the passing of Hall of Famer George Reed, who is one of the greatest CFL running backs and figures around the Canadian Football League all time. And honestly, played his entire career for the Roughriders. Obviously, me being a pretty young person, I didn't get to see him play, but this guy, just looking at his statistics, 11-time 1,000-yard rusher in the Canadian Football League. I venture that's probably a CFL record. So, I mean, just an incredible career for him, and he's one of the all-time greats. So, sad to see him go, and, rest in power.
Yeah, I saw that come out. It was late last night, right? And I saw Randy and everyone kind of put that out. So yeah, I wanted to make sure we talked about that off the top of the show. A couple other news items. Big game, obviously, coming up this Friday in BC, whatever, Vancouver. I will be in attendance there. Dorothy and I, we have our Airbnb and all of that. So we will be there making the trek up to BC Place for that game, leaving hopefully immediately after Dorothy's school. So I don't know if they're doing like a gravy bowl Thanksgiving. I don't, I don't know what you Canadians do. So it's like we're celebrating, Thanksgiving in October, but we'll be up there for that. So that'll be exciting. So if you're around, say hi. We'll be getting drinks afterward. Evan, excited? Get to go back. You were a BC Place earlier this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really nice spot. I think you'll enjoy it, and I'm hoping that. Well, I've been to BC Place a couple of times, but obviously, we'll cross Hamilton off the list. Hoping to get to a couple more, CFL venues, especially the ones that maybe feel a bit more. I don't know if I want to use the word remote, but like you went to Regina for the Grey Cup, and Winnipeg. I feel like those would all be cool spots to visit. So definitely on my list. I'm hoping to get up there at some point.
Jason, game of the year thus far, I feel like stakes, I don't think could be higher. To me, and we'll preview the games, but I think, I don't know. I think BC needs that first place in the West. Do you disagree of the importance of that, of not having to go into Mosaic?
IG Field. Yeah. I definitely agree. I think the Lions definitely need to win this game on Friday night. I mean, I take it as basically, a playoff game in and of itself, because I mean, like you saw last year how difficult it was, even with Nathan Rourke, to go in there and get a win at IG Field come playoff time. So I'm really excited for this week's game.
Yeah, and we'll talk Lions. Seems like they showed up this week. We had Andrew on the show, and I don't know. I like to kind of get in his perspective, because I know we've been a little critical about, Coach Rick and kind of the locker room and everything during the season. And good to kind of see, like, how do they compartmentalize kind of wins and losses. And so if you missed Andrew's interview on the Friday show, the other thing, this is tremendous news, I think. To me, all respect to Carrie Underwood, Miss Underwood, and the Sunday Night Football theme song, but Green Day here announced Saturday. I got the email. I was at the AEW wrestling event, so I know they did it, I think, halftime at the Hamilton game. I'll give my thoughts on this, but I'll defer to you two first, since you actually are in the target demographic, where I am no longer in the 18 to 34 target demo. Evan, what do you make of this? Green Day, I think this is tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say this much. I wouldn't consider myself to be a huge Green Day fan, but, Green Day is one of those bands where it's like, I feel like when I was growing up, they were always on the radio. I know several of their songs, again, and I'm not, a fan. I don't really listen to them regularly, but there's no denying, the impact that they've had on, music across the U.S. And, especially, I mean, if you look at, I think they peaked, back, 2000s, right? So maybe 90s. I'm not, again, this is even getting, well, I'm at the very edge of that 18 to 34 demographic, so you can't quote me on any of this.
No, that's fine.
No, man. I mean, look, I'm definitely excited. I think, you combine this with Carrie Underwood, it's a very good showing. And, I know that there's been, some backlash in recent years of, not having, Canadian performers, at the games. But I completely agree, Reed. I think this is a massive get, for the Grey Cup. And I was definitely surprised to see, Green Day, pop up during the announcement, which I think happened at halftime of that Hamilton Calgary game.
Yeah, and this is because this is what's interesting, and you're fine. Like, well, I don't even, I kind of agree. Like that's great because I'm just, you're trying to hit all different demos here, right? And people are tired of the country. Like, Jason, what do you make of this?
I think it's fantastic. Honestly, Green Day personally is one of probably my top 5 favorite bands like ever. I mean, I always say, do they even have a bad song? It's like they have just so many popular songs, and they were pretty relevant even recently. So I think that it was a great get for the CFL halftime show. It was funny. I was at the game with my buddy, and he was like, "Any guesses for the halftime show?" And I was just randomly, I was like, I don't know, Green Day. And then a few minutes later, it was announced as Green Day. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think it's great because they're one of I can't think of many bands that are as popular across a wide range of demographics as Green Day. I know my dad even likes Green Day. All my siblings like Green Day. So, I mean, they're very popular across a wide age range, which is very important for a halftime show like this.
Yeah, I did see, and Evan was talking, and I love Bob. I love Bob Irving, friend of the show. He's been on, Green Day is an American band. I don't, the mishmash of for the Georgia Line and whatever the heck country artist we had last year was definitely not a Canadian either. So I think that that's okay. To me, it's getting in it. And you brought up the point, like your dad likes it. I went to a Les and Jake show a couple weeks ago, and similar age range. They're nowhere near as obviously as popular, but they've been doing this now 30 years, and you're getting to the point where the people my age and older are bringing their kids to the show, right? And so it's almost like this weird circle of like we were seeing 10-year-olds mosh pitting in like the safest mosh pit in the world because it's a bunch of 45-year-old dads like kind of like with them helping it. So I think it's great. I mean, I think they're mega superstar. I think they have a CD coming out, so that kind of makes sense that they're doing that. But you want to market the CFL Grey Cup halftime show as a big deal. I mean, this is widely viewed in terms of like Canadian interest per year, right? Even if you're not watching the CFL, you're going to watch the Grey Cup. And so I think this is tremendous. Burned, right? You guys had Nickelback and Bieber and stuff, but to me, like, I don't know, Green Day, the longevity of it, I think Nickelback probably burned hotter, but I think Green Day has certainly burned a lot longer than the Nickelback had.
Yeah, certainly.
Jason, so Bieber, when did Bieber do it? And was he at the height of his power when Bieber was the Grey Cup show? Was that tremendous?
Yeah, that was a huge deal. That was for the 100th Grey Cup in Toronto. So it was a huge deal in 2012. And it was Justin Bieber, Marianas Trench, Carly Rae Jepsen, and I think it was Gordon Lightfoot of all people that was part of that as well. So it was a big deal, and they made it a big deal for that game at Rogers Center.
We'll be there. Yeah, maybe there'll be a little. Let's put together a little media event here. Let's get in with the Green Day. Maybe we can do all that stuff. So here we go. Week 17 here coming up. Obviously, we have our wonderful CFL stats on here. Jason, the Calgary Hamilton game. You were in attendance. We had the announcements and kind of all that stuff. What did you make of that Saturday night?
Well, I mean, first of all, from the Calgary perspective, I mean, this team just looks lifeless. I think you could stick a fork in them, even though they're not mathematically, eliminated yet, because Saskatchewan's just going on a skid of their own. But I just don't see them getting 2 or 3 more wins the rest of the season that will be necessary for them to make the playoffs. They just look like a team that's completely, like I said, lifeless at this point. And then for the Hamilton perspective, I thought that this was the best I think I've seen the Ticats defense look this season, other than maybe that game at BC. I thought they looked really, tremendous throughout this entire game. They really didn't give up very many big plays. And on offense, it was kind of weird because they gave Powell the quick hook, and they brought in Matthew Schultz, and Schultz immediately comes in and throws, I think it was like a 70-yard touchdown to Tim White. And that was really the turning point of the game because Calgary was up 6-0 at that point, and then Hamilton was able to, even that score up and didn't really look back from there. So I thought it was a really strong game from the Hamilton perspective, even though they didn't win by a whole bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a typical Calgary 15. Like, if you can score 20 plus more points, like, I think you're going to beat Calgary. They just haven't proven. I was kind of reminding me listening to the pregame for the Jets Chiefs last night, where they're like, the Jets are going to need to be able to put up 25 points plus to beat the Chiefs, and they haven't proven that they've been able to do that. Look at the game last night. I mean, they weren't they weren't able to do that. So, yeah, Evan, seeing your boy here, Schiltz coming back in this, what did you make of Hamilton?
Yeah, I mean, this was a very good outing by Hamilton in a game that, it was nice to see them sort of clinch, playoffs at home. I think again, there was a lot of a couple of weeks ago it seemed like, this might have not been possible, and we were very, hesitant to kind of, lock in Hamilton as a playoff team. But again, they've sort of, really built things up, in these last couple of weeks here, of the season. And now obviously, I mean, they look capable. We'll see how they, ride with some of the bigger teams in the playoffs, right? But they certainly look capable. Really impressed to get, with Schiltz. I know you brought that up. Really impressed with his performance. Him coming in 225 yards on 11 completions is pretty outstanding. You don't see that very often. I mean, again, a lot of big playability. I'm sure that 70-yard touchdown or whatever it was to Tim White helped out, but yeah, definitely a nice performance by Hamilton all around. And then, Jason brought up the defense. I know we don't talk a lot of defense on this show, but guys like Jameer Thurman, Will Sunderland, they all stood out. And then, Calgary, I have to agree with everything that's already been said. I feel like Calgary, even if they're not mathematically eliminated, I don't know how you view this as a playoff team. Every time you kind of say that they have to win, you're pulling for them. They just can't get the job done. So, unfortunately, it's been one of those years for Calgary. Again, very, very uncharacteristic for them since they're in the playoffs every year. But it really just kind of has been one of those years where, they're never really able to get over the hump. And keep in mind, Calgary has flashed a lot of good things, even though I think we've been a bit critical at times. Calgary has, had their games where they looked, complete, and they were able to, impress, especially on the offensive side of the ball where things have been, it feels like they've been really slow and conservative. But yeah, I mean, overall, Calgary just, this was a game where I thought they honestly had a chance. I thought maybe they could, surprise Hamilton just because Hamilton's kind of been in their groove, and, maybe they were going to get a bit too comfortable. But no, I mean, they Hamilton stood tall, and Calgary was just, just a bit short. So, it's too bad, but, life goes on. And, I think it's a time, that it really proves that the CFL is changing. If Calgary's starting to, slow down a bit and possibly be looking at, making some significant changes in the offseason.
Jason, in terms of, Schiltz coming in here, and obviously it's early Monday, we'll kind of figure out stuff this week, but like, is that the game plan moving forward? What did you make of that in terms of getting to the playoffs here?
Well, they've had some weird strategies the past couple of years with their quarterbacks. I mean, remember last year when they had, at times, they were playing Dane and Matthew Schiltz like in the same game when they were both healthy. So, I mean, we could see that like a platoon situation where, Powell starts the game and Schiltz comes in again. And then, they kind of go back and forth with that and kind of ride the hot hand. But, I mean, I think because Schiltz finished this game, he'll probably get the start next week. But like I said, with the strategies that they've deployed in the past, and you also have to bring up the potential for Bo Levi Mitchell's return, that could throw a wrench in the whole thing. So it should be very interesting to see, who's going to be under center for the Ticats in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we do this a lot, like XFL. We get the spring football, like, oh, we're gonna ride the hot hand of the quarterback. I mean, Evan, did you ever see that working like long term?
You mean with Schiltz?
Well, just like just the concept of that. Like I said, Jason, I get what he's saying because it does seem like they've done that before. But like I said, we've seen that in other leagues. Like, well, we're gonna. I think you got to ride with one. I don't think you can pull. Okay, you had a bad drive. Okay, we got to pull you.
Right.
We saw Mac Jones get pulled yesterday. Like, I just think you kind of got to ride or die here.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that part of it. I mean, I think, at the quarterback position, you're looking for consistency. And if you're swapping guys in and out of a game, all the time, no one's going to really be able to, put things together in a complete manner. Like I know in college, one of the better examples of a 2-quarterback system was Sacramento State, because their team, went to the playoffs and they had a very, very good run at the FCS level last year with their 2 quarterbacks, Jake Dunaway Astro Hara, I believe, and Dunaway is actually now with the Ottawa Redblacks. So kind of funny how that all works out. But my point being, it's very rare to see a 2-quarterback system, if that's what you want to call it. It's very rare to see that work out, in my opinion. And I feel like, once you have a guy in there, who looks capable, you kind of just have to roll with that for a bit, barring any setbacks. I feel like if you have a 2-quarterback system, it just creates a scenario where, it's kind of like you've got, 2 siblings fighting over something. It just kind of feels like there might be might be a bit of a shift in power, because again, quarterback's supposed to be a leader, right? It's a leadership position. You're supposed to take accountability. And, if there's 2 quarterbacks, it's kind of hard to, follow a certain one. Like, you want to follow both, but then you don't know who's going to be in. So again, it doesn't just affect the quarterback as well. It also affects all the guys around him, the receivers that are catching the ball. Maybe one quarterback can run, so you're going to have more, option plays or whatever. Again, there's a lot of logistics that go into that. But yeah, I feel like most of the time rolling with one quarterback is the right way to go.
So Jason, we're basically looking here. I was trying to look at the schedule here coming up. So if we look at the standings, right, Ticats, we got to get we want home field advantage, right, in the semis against the Alouettes. Coming up, they have I had it here in a minute. So Hamilton's going into Saskatchewan, right, Ottawa into Montreal, and then the next week you got BC at home, and then obviously Edmonton hosting the Alouettes. Any prediction there? Do you think Hamilton's able to make up that game on Montreal?
Probably not, because I don't see the Redblacks beating the Alouettes at this point, given the poor effort that we saw this past weekend. So I think the Alouettes will get a win there. Hamilton, I'm 50-50 about whether or not they're going to go into Saskatchewan and win, even though Saskatchewan's looking very poor right now themselves. That's been a house of horrors for the Ticats. I can tell you, as a Ticats fan, I think they haven't won there in like 7 years or something like that. Like, even the year in 2019 where they went 15-3, that was one of their losses that year. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to get a win there, and then there'll be a 2-game gap, and that would basically be it from that point. But, I do think I like their chances at home against BC. I think, given what we saw in that first match against them. And then last week of the season, they play, on the road against Montreal. So that'll be an interesting game if it means anything at that point. So I'm really excited to see what happens the rest of the season. But, I think at the end of the day, I don't see the Alouettes giving up that second place spot to Hamilton.
So and you're a lot more knowledgeable about all these playoff seedings and standings. Like, so, crazy world here. BC shows up Friday, right? Kicks the pants off Winnipeg. Do they have to stay a game up on Winnipeg, or like, is it because the tiebreaker and all? Like, are we still having to, like, going into Hamilton here, and we've got the host Calgary? Like, what do you make of BC at the end of their schedule if we are able to get the game up?
Yeah, if BC wins this weekend against Winnipeg, they'll have the tiebreaker, and they'll be, because they have the same record right now, they'll be a game up. Okay. So they would effectively have a little bit of of a cushion there to drop a game if they so happen to lose against Hamilton in a few weeks, for example. So I think, like I said, that game on Friday is absolutely huge. I think it decides basically everything. And I mean, it could have looked even better for BC if Toronto was able to hold on and beat Winnipeg on Friday night. But unfortunately for the Lions, it didn't happen. So they'll have to take care of business themselves.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're looking here, you got, like we said, the Friday game, Hamilton, you're going into Hamilton and then hosting Calgary to kind of end up the year. Evan, I guess any other thoughts? We'll get to the other games here. Any other thoughts, Calgary or Hamilton here? No. No. Jason, anything else on this? Hamilton faithful, was the hammer rocking?
Yeah, it was a great crowd. I felt like, because Calgary's not necessarily a big draw. Like, you see, like, the fans really come out for the Toronto games and, the games, like, against a marquee opponent, like, say, like a Winnipeg or maybe even a BC. But I think for it being a game against Calgary, I thought the crowd was really excellent. I think it was around 23,000 there on Saturday night. So I thought it was a great crowd and a great atmosphere for that announcement for Green Day as the halftime show.
All right, so let's get in here. Let me get back over. So Montreal going into Ottawa here. We'll go Jason first on this while I get it pulled up. Thoughts on this one?
I don't have many thoughts on this one because I didn't get a chance to really watch too much of this game. My main takeaway would be that just the Redblacks, just like Calgary, they're very similar teams. They came out with no fight in this one once again. It was 22-0 entering the fourth quarter. They had multiple turnovers in the red zone. They had a situation where I think they were down by 7 points at that point of the game early in the second quarter, and they threw a pick six to Marc-Antoine Dequoy, who's having an excellent season, by the way, for Montreal. So, I mean, the Red Blacks just a very disappointing effort for them. I thought that this game would be a lot closer than it ended up being, but ultimately they didn't show up to play. And then Montreal, nothing spectacular from them, but defense continues to be a big story. Fajardo was solid in this one, didn't turn the ball over. William Stanback getting some good yardage and efficiency there. So that was good to see from them. But I think the big takeaway was Ottawa just showing up flat once again.
Yeah, we had an Arbuckle appearance here as well, 7 of 9.
Yeah, I guess so. Like I said, I didn't catch too much of the game, but I was kind of shocked when I looked at the box score and saw that he got into some action because they were very, very reluctant to play him ever since those first couple appearances at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Crum here, like we said, come back down to earth. I mean, I certainly think he's played well enough to kind of carry the team next year, at least to kind of be in that contention. Evan, thoughts on this? I know this is kind of the Saturday afternoon, or kind of, I think it was even like earlier than that here on the West Coast.
Yeah, I watched a good chunk of this game. I think, first half and then a bit into the third quarter. Yeah, this game to me felt like it was over pretty quickly. It was just clear that, I mean, Montreal kind of came out, and it don't, keep in mind it was slow, but I just didn't really feel like Ottawa had the juice in that game to get things done. But I will say a couple notes. I was really impressed with the way Justin Crum spread the ball around to his receivers. It almost reminded me of Vernon Adams in BC. And, obviously he didn't have the yardage. He threw 2 picks. Arbuckle came in after, whatever. But Ottawa, I think, had 5 receivers with over 4 catches in that game, which I thought was very impressive. Definitely getting a lot of guys worked in. And then on the Montreal side, I know what's his name? Austin Mack was out this game, so you had Cole Speaker filling in, 3 catches for 60 yards. Stanback really impressed me in this game. Wasn't a terribly, exciting performance, I guess, but 6.5 yards per carry and a touchdown is extremely respectable. Just felt like, he was kind of a workhorse, and, really nice to see him again kind of, progress through the course of the season, because we had talked about at the beginning of the season, he was a bit slow with the injury and everything, and, coming off that. And then, this was kind of I think a big year for him. And, he's, now in these last couple weeks, seems like, he's finding his way, I should say. And, he was doing that a bit, a couple weeks ago too, here and there, that there was definitely signs things were going in the right direction. But the one, really interesting takeaway that I had from this game, and, this is kind of a bit random, but there was a play in this game that really got some traction on Twitter, and I'm talking like it kind of went viral. And it was, I believe, Jess from Montreal.
Punt, right?
Yes, the onside punt. And I had no idea, what was going on or why that was important. Like, I thought, to me, I thought the coolest play of the game was when I think Montreal missed a field goal, and then Ottawa returned it, and then the ball went out of Ottawa's hands right back into, I believe it was Sibasu, maybe. He had the ball, and then it was like this really weird turnover. But yeah, the onside punt gained a lot of traction. Everyone was like, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. And then I think it was Trey Watson, who's in the XFL right now. He used to play with Montreal. He said, man, like, you wouldn't understand the CFL unless you were reading the rule book during the game. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was just one of those things where, I don't know, I was like scratching my head during the game, like, what is he doing? And I went on Twitter, and I'm like, geez, like, this is getting a lot of attention for some, random CFL play on a Saturday. But hey, I mean, more publicity for the league, and it was definitely talked about, afterwards for a bit. So that I guess was nice to see.
But was this, I mean, so this was on purpose, like, yeah, very odd here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine as a novelty, like, happens once. I've never seen this before. I thought it had to travel a certain amount of yards, but I guess not. I mean, he tried to, like, Antwi himself tried this play earlier in the year against BC, and it backfired on him. I think it was a fumble, and it ultimately cost the Alouettes in that game. But yeah, I think it's fine for like a one-time thing. But if this becomes like a thing that people try, I think it makes the league look bad. I think ultimately at the end of the day, it looks really silly. I feel like, and they would have to put some kind of amendment. But I think if it's just this one time, I think it's fine.
I just don't get. So we're 2nd and 18 here. I just don't understand, like, what is the purpose of this? It looks more like an accident than anything else.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why, but it resets the down. So he got a first down out of that. It doesn't make sense to me. I think it should be because apparently the rule is as long as you kick it behind the line of scrimmage and it crosses the line of scrimmage and you recover it beyond the line of scrimmage, it's a first down. But I think it should be, it has to be beyond the first down marker. I think that makes more sense to me. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, I don't think we're going to see this on a regular basis. And if it does, I think the CFL will have to do something about it.
So I'm taking it back. I tweeted last night during the Chiefs game that, hey, I agree. People talking CFL rules better than the NFL and all that stuff because you got Mahomes here sliding. I take all that back. I take all that back that this is a legal forward play and then they were able to reset it. Evan, this is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I didn't realize, like, until I, started doing some research, I was like, why would he do that? And I realized, you can get an automatic first down doing that. But I will say, extremely risky play. Like, I'm surprised, it makes me, well, I shouldn't say it makes me happy, but at least makes me feel a bit better knowing that, someone has tried this before and lost the football, because the reality is, like, it looks like, I mean, you're taking a huge risk, letting the ball out of your hands and having it roll even just for a couple yards. If there's any defenders in that area, someone could fall on it and, it's a turnover. You lost the fumble essentially. So yeah, I agree with Jason. It's like, it's cool, for maybe one time, but like, if people think that this is like a new trick that's going to work, every time you've got a long second down, I think you might be sorely mistaken. I hope, well, I don't hope, but it's like, it's one of those things where, maybe we will see it play out where a team, unfortunately, loses the football and gives up, good field position to the other team, just to really, bring the point home and to learn a lesson. Cause I don't know, that's gotta be one of the weirdest things ever, like I've ever seen in any level of football, not even like, just NFL or high level pro ball, but, college, even like high school. I mean, that's like that feels like something that would happen like at the high school level to me.
If you had Dustin Nielsen on the call, what is he doing? What is he doing? Okay, that's crazy. All right, anything else on this one? I mean, you would think, if anything, that would be Bob Dice would be dialing that up, not Montreal. You think Bobby Dice, the special teams guy, would be doing that. Jason, anything else on this one?
Yeah, I guess I'll give a couple shout outs for each team. So for Montreal, like I said, William Stanback, it's good to see him playing well. Reggie Stubblefield, I think he's been a really good addition for the back end for the Alouettes. He had 8 tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception in this game, so really filled the stat sheet. Marc-Antoine Dequoy, excellent season, pick 6 in this one. And then for the Redblacks, Braylon Addison had his best game in a long time, 7 catches for 94 yards. And then Cleon Lang, defensive tackle, who I used to think was one of the best Canadian players in the CFL, but it's went quiet the last couple of years. He had a big game in this one with a couple of sacks.
And then I guess I was looking ahead here. Yeah, we were talking before, but yeah, Montreal going. What is it? Ottawa coming into Montreal doing these home at home again. Really feels like set up here for Alouettes to take second here in the East. Jason, how do you feel Ticats traveling in, and will you be making the journey with your boys
for
the semis?
Oh, the semis. No, I probably will not be going to Montreal, but I'd love to. I plan to make it there one day. That's one of the CFL stadiums I haven't been to, along with all the other Western ones. But I think, at the end of the day, I probably won't end up traveling to that one. It's interesting because basically we're going to have almost a repeat of last year's playoffs, it looks like, because I think Montreal's going to hold on to second. So it's going to be Hamilton traveling to Montreal. The only thing different this year, it looks like Saskatchewan's going to make it. But yeah, I think BC's probably going to finish second if they lose this game on Friday, they'll probably finish second. So, I mean, yeah, it looks like deja vu for CFL fans.
Well, and that's what I mean, and I've said this many times to get on here, but swap out Saskatchewan for Calgary if the BC's in second place. They'll host them in Vancouver and then travel into Winnipeg, and that is to me gets terrifying on that. Going here, BC hosting Saskatchewan got a little close at the end, but I feel like some of this was we took the foot off the gas in terms of defensive stuff here. Evan, we'll talk. Go to you first.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch a ton of this game. I mean, I watched a bit, here and there, but yeah, I mean, once again, just another offensive clinic from BC. Again, the defense, it got a bit close there. Saskatchewan, I think, had 15 points in the fourth quarter. So talk about a rally. But I mean, again, that offense is just so lethal, so potent. Like, I mean, Vernon Adams, like, it's almost like if he doesn't throw for more than 400 yards in a game, it's a disappointment now. And that's a crazy number. I know it's CFL, whatever. Maybe it's more of a passing league, but like, man, I mean, every game, I think he's over 4,000 now, if I'm not mistaken. I think he hit that in this game. So, Vernon, again, continues to be impressive. 27 to 36, 458, 3 touchdowns. The run game, for BC, still a bit slow. That's something where, we've talked about this before, and I'm not going to touch on it too much here, but maybe one of those things you want to lean into a bit more before the playoffs, just to be safe, just to make sure that you have everything, where you want it before you go and take on, Winnipeg, wherever that is. Again, whether it's in BC or, at IG Field. Again, crazy how this is all unfolding now, and we were talking about that being one of the biggest scenarios of the season like 2 months ago. But anyway, that's a separate story. Yeah, and then the receivers for BC. I mean, do I even need to talk about them anymore? Hollins, Hatcher. I mean, everybody gets a nice piece here in that offense, especially Hatcher in this game. Just had an absolutely outstanding performance. And then for Saskatchewan, I don't know. I feel like they've had a lot of games where they've lost, and their offense continues to impress me, but it just comes down to their own defense and, some turnovers here and there. And, it seems like, I mean, Dolegala threw for 409 yards, but did not have a passing touchdown. I mean, that's fascinating to me, but not necessarily for the right reasons. So, and again, their run game, I mean, I think we've discussed this before too, but their run game might even need some more work than BC's in certain areas. I just don't even know, yes, BC and Saskatchewan have both struggled at times running the football, but I feel like BC, at least with Mizell, they have a bit more of a higher ceiling there. Whereas I look at Saskatchewan and I'm like, I don't know, so that's tough. But then, I mean, they had two, interestingly, BC only had one 100-plus yard receiver, and that was Keon Hatcher. But Saskatchewan had two of them, in Keon Schaefer-Baker and Jareth Stearns, who, I've talked about Jareth Stearns at nauseum being, one of my, favorite players. He was one of my favorite players at the college level, and I've been very pleased with, what he's been able to do, coming into the CFL. He signed with Saskatchewan, I think, in July, so, middle of the season type thing, and has come in and has really, carved out a role for himself there. But, yeah, ultimately, this was a game I expected BC to win. Their offense continues to, really impress me. One of the more, I think, exciting, offenses to watch in the entire league. And I say that, even with all the teams like Toronto and Winnipeg, who go out there and, sling it every weekend. I mean, I've seen BC, live, now in back-to-back seasons at BC Place, and both times, I mean, the story was their offense. First it was with Nathan Rourke. Second time it was with, of course, Vernon Adams, who's there now. But yeah, I mean, that it was a pretty, again, just about what I expected. A couple things that could have been better, but BC gets the win, and they carry that momentum into the big game that you're going to, Reed.
Yeah, you're talking here, Vernon, and if this is, we can never tell with the CFL.ca, but yeah, 4,000, over 4,000 yards now for the season. Tremendous for that. Just a couple thoughts, and I want to get to Jason. Rhymes was back, right? He had been out, so that was good to see. Vernon here, crazy 458, but giving up, like, where are the donut boys? You giving up 409 yards to Jake Dolegala? I mean, Jason, what do you like? You can't give. You got Winnipeg coming in. You can't be giving it 400 plus yards to Saskatchewan.
I think that's misleading. I think they gave up a lot of those yards, and because this game
garbage time.
was,
Okay.
yeah, this game was I think a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter, and that's kind of when I stopped watching the game because it was just too far to reach at that point. But then I looked at the final score, and Saskatchewan scored 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes. So I think that's where they got a lot of those yards. Like Evan said, Saskatchewan can get much going on the ground. So I think that BC's defense actually played very well in this game. They were pretty relentless early in the game. And on the other side of the ball, I thought that, BC's offense was just clicking on all cylinders. So I think they're kind of ramping up toward this matchup. They had a couple of poor performances a few weeks ago, as we alluded to. The game against Hamilton, the game against Ottawa where they almost lost. But now it feels like they're back in the swing of things and ready for that big matchup against Winnipeg. And I think that, if they play like this, they can beat any team in the CFL and could go on a Grey Cup run here.
I mean, you gotta play 60 minutes here, Jason. I don't like giving up garbage time TDs to Jake Delgado here.
Yeah.
In terms of rushing here, and I understand, like, well, we have a million receivers and we don't need to do that. But like Evan talked about this, Jason, like, we're giving Mizell 38. Like, I don't know. I feel like this is a tale as old as time. We got this snazzy West Coast team. We're going to go into Manitoba here and we're going to get crushed. They're going to pound the rock in the snow and in the ice. Like, have I foreseen the future already?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like the biggest difference between BC and Toronto and Winnipeg right now. It seems like, Toronto and Winnipeg, they have these big imposing running backs with Oliveira and Ouellette and Andrew Harris. I'll even throw in there for Toronto. Whereas, BC, I believe, like, I would have to check, but a few weeks ago, they were dead last in rushing, and I don't think that's changed. So I think, they're much more of a finesse team, and that makes it all the more important for them to get that number 1 seed and host the West Final.
Evan, in terms of our boy Vernon here, clean game, 3 touchdowns, like we've talked about him, tremendous season. Like, is there a chance that he's in the MOP discussion? I know Farhan and Naylor, they like pumping him up, but we keep talking, obviously, Chad Kelly, but now he's not going to be playing. Like, what do you make of that with Vernon?
I think he's in the discussion, but to say that he has a good chance of winning is a bit of a reach. And, I think that's more of the emergence. Let me put it this way. Zach Collaros, we all know, has been established for a long time. Chad Kelly is probably the most likely option to win MOP, I believe, just given that, Toronto, we've got like, a month left of regular season play, and, they can pretty much rest him. Maybe that does affect, his chances for MOP. I don't know. But, Vernon, I feel like, yeah, I mean, Vernon should definitely be in the discussion. Absolutely. It's just a matter of, we'll see. I think, my only issue with Vernon, and this might be the reason that, he's discussed, but he doesn't win it, is, again, yes, he throws the ball a lot. They've been very efficient on offense. He has these games, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, no problems. But, when he has an off day, it tends to be pretty off. And, we saw that a couple of times, like against Toronto, where he had, I don't even know how many picks. Yeah, it was some egregious number. And even against Ottawa, we talked about that. I guess that was 2 weeks ago now because I wasn't here last week. But, it was just like 1 interception. Okay, fine. And then you just kind of start, the turnovers start piling up. And, like that's the only tough thing. Like if you look at, I mean, I don't know if those are all, it's, I don't know if that's Vernon's stat line there, but like,
yes, yeah.
Touchdowns.
So I know. So here I've got Vernon's 28-16, 4,005 yards. We got Chad Kelly here, 21-11, 3,300, almost 3,400 yards. Obviously playing, he was hurt in the game, played, didn't play whatever. And then Collaros really clean here, 30-14, 3,700 yards. I mean, if Vernon doesn't have that Toronto game, I think he's really more in contention here. I mean, Jason, like, I think Collaros not head and shoulders, but I mean, there's clearly a line there. But what do you make of this?
Well, it's funny. We were talking last week on the show, in case you missed it, Evan, about whether or not Vernon still had a chance in the MOP race, and I actually said no. But now he has a game like this, and if they can win this week against BC, it's going to be very interesting because if they finish first in the West and Vernon plays excellent from this point to the end of the season, I think he definitely has a shot to win this award, because where you place in the standings always seems like it has a role or plays a role in who wins these awards. And I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I would have said Kelly would win it, but I think because of the the statistical difference, because of all the missed games, and even before that, Claris's numbers were better than Kelly. So I think at the end of the day, Claris is probably still going to win it, but there still is a chance for Vernon to get back into it because of these big games coming up.
To me, that's the story. Like we've had this with Zach and Vernon, and he was with Montreal, and then he got traded midseason. He's doing all this. I mean, if you guys hadn't listened to the interview when we had Vernon on, I guess it was preseason this year, talking about and I was paying rent in Montreal, and I was paying rent in Vancouver, and I still have my house in Tacoma, and I'm trying to learn this rule book. To have the whole season under his belt here, come back and really kick ass, I think is a pretty exciting thing, especially for someone that's been in the CFL as long as Vernon has. I mean, I know emotion doesn't go into it. You got to look at the stats and everything here, but it's an interesting discussion. Evan, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't rule Vernon out, and the reality is, I mean, if Chad Kelly continues to rest, that might push him out. I mean, now that we're looking at the numbers, if we want to base it off that, I mean, Caleros definitely has the best ratio. There's no surprise there when it comes to touchdowns, interceptions, everything like that. But Vernon, the thing is, again, it goes back to this upcoming game, and if Vernon can, if Vernon has a couple, that Saskatchewan stat line that we just looked at, 27-36, 458, 3 touchdowns. If he can keep doing that for, just a couple more weeks or whatever, then I'd feel like, he honestly would have a good chance. And, I still find it hard to say that, he would be the front runner, but there's a lot there, that there's really something there. And, there's no denying that Vernon has been, one of the most impressive quarterbacks. Again, yes, he's had some turnovers. He's had some, mental errors, whatever, but every quarterback has that. And, I feel like, right now, I don't know. Right now, it's a bit up in the air. But, if in these final few weeks he really goes out there and continues to make a statement, I don't see why you'd take him out of that discussion.
Yeah, I'm happy, and I think like you said, if you take the Toronto game out, I think this is an entirely different discussion. But everyone's allowed. You're entitled to a bad game or two. It's it's a 18 game, 21 week season. I think you're allowed to have that. Like I said, longevity of it. Here's someone that I think a lot of people had really kind of written off. And okay, he's in Montreal, or he comes. I know, as much as I loved him as a person, I was a little worried. Okay, and now this year, and we got all these toys he's playing with, and I think he's been great. I think he's matured into it. I know Andy's a fan of him. I know we're big fans in the group. Jason, any other thoughts on Vernon, or just the story of kind of where he's at right now?
Yeah, I'm really happy for him. I feel like this is, his place in the CFL. This is it feels like he's really found a home. I mean, it looked like, a couple of years ago, he looked great in Montreal, but I mean, things just kind of developed there. And for whatever reason, they decided to bring in Trevor Harris, and they decided to, make him the starting quarterback there. And then obviously he ended up leaving too, but things, ended pretty poorly in Montreal. But I think this is really where he belongs in the CFL. And it's good to see him, finally, settle in here, because he's a guy that came to the CFL with a lot of hype, and a lot of people were saying this guy is an ideal fit for the CFL game, and that was years ago. So it's finally great to see that he settles in here and is in the MOP discussion. And one other name I wanted to throw out into the MOP discussion, he won't get any serious consideration of winning it, but Brady Oliveira has had an excellent season, one of the best seasons by a running back we've seen in quite a few years in the CFL. And I mean, if we didn't have all these excellent quarterbacks, because that's really what happens when you talk about the MOP discussion. If a quarterback's having a great season, they're going to win that award. But the years that there's not really that outstanding quarterback, that's when you usually see a positional player win it. But I think at the end of the day, Oliveira deserves a shout out as well, because his numbers this year have been excellent.
Yeah, and then Ken Friedman's just chiming in the chat. He says the 2 games that the Argos lost, Kelly was hurt or did not play. the fact that he's not playing here at the end of the season, they clinch first because of him. I know, but it's like the news cycle. And okay, we're moving on here. I mean, you're going to stat compare there. My other thing, and then we'll get to the last game here in terms of Saskatchewan, just because obviously. Presumably, we'll see if BC or whoever has to. I think it's Saskatchewan takes on BC here, or Saskatchewan takes on Winnipeg in the playoffs. I think it's a walk in the park. But what do you make here, Jason? And we'll get Evan's thoughts. We'll move on here real quick. But just Saskatchewan moving forward, kind of wallowing here in the standings a little bit.
Well, it's weird because they're almost surely going to make the playoffs, but yeah, it looks like they're just set up to lose in that West semifinal. And I know they've beaten Winnipeg and BC like once before, but I think at the end of the day, they don't look super close to those teams right now. And the last time we saw Winnipeg play Saskatchewan, Winnipeg destroyed them in that game. In the playoffs would be on the road in Winnipeg, and likewise for the Saskatchewan versus BC matchup. So I think at the end of the day, they're kind of stuck in the middle here. They're going to make the playoffs unless Calgary has a sudden resurgence here, or Ottawa runs off 3 straight wins. But I think at the end of the day, don't know what to make of them because, they really don't look like they have anywhere to go right now because it looks like they're going to make the playoffs but not do anything else.
Yeah, super disappointing again. I mean, last year, I know there was a lot of, heads being called for because of obviously them hosting the Grey Cup and everything. But to feel like, I don't know what you do here. Jason, any other thoughts, Saskatchewan? I mean, Evan, sorry.
No.
Oh yeah,
Evan,
Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of, I feel like what everyone else has already said. I mean, you go, whatever they're going to have to do, it's going to be on the road against a really tough team. And I just I don't really see them doing too much. It's been an interesting season for Saskatchewan. I feel like they have a lot to work with. I always say that, whether they win or lose, they have a lot of pieces there. But obviously Trevor Harris getting hurt as early as he did, I think kind of, well, it certainly didn't derail the season if they're in playoff contention, but it feels like they've had a lot of, shifting components, even outside of the quarterback position. I mean, you went from Trevor Harris to Mason Fine to now Jake Dolegala seems like the guy. And, I'd be comfortable, moving forward with Dolegala, depending on what happens with Trevor Harris. I do think he will be back. But, again, Dolegala can maybe go to another team next year. And I think I've brought that up where, you have a good showing in Saskatchewan. You can go do something somewhere else. But anyway, with Saskatchewan in particular, I just feel like they have a lot of moving pieces and things kind of got shaken up for them early. So it's been a real mixed bag with them. Fortunately, they do have games where they're exciting to watch, and they have won against. I think that. Interestingly enough, I feel like, and if we want to talk about playoffs here real quick, I was just running through scenarios in my head. Unlike Montreal in the East, the Saskatchewan has actually beaten, some of the better teams. They've beaten BC, they've beaten Winnipeg before. And that to me really stands out. Again, I unfortunately feel like, that's just, I feel like, it's going to be too strong in the playoffs and they're not going to be able to overcome that. But like, I look at Montreal and I'm like, at the rate, things are going at, Hamilton could go into Montreal and I think they could win that game. And, I think that would set up a very interesting, Eastern final. I guess that would be between Hamilton and Toronto. But yeah, just a lot there. It's for Saskatchewan again. Going back to my original point, I would say their season overall. I mean, if you make playoffs, I'd call it a success given how much uncertainty there was again. But no denying that there's still some work that needs to be done. And obviously, this was a big. This was a year of change for them. This was their first year. You moved on from Cody Fajardo. You moved on from, some of the coaches. Jason Moss, right. So, definitely a change there. But, I feel like there is a bright future for a team like Saskatchewan. And, you can't say that for everybody else in the league right now.
Last game here, we'll get to kind of the weird game. And I thought we had Rod Smith on the show previewing, kind of talking CFL going into the weekend. Like, people have been very critical. Like, why wasn't this game earlier in the Grey Cup rematch? Really, didn't amount for a lot. We saw Brian Scott here, friend of the show, did not have the best outing. Jason, what do you make of this one? Winnipeg, Toronto felt like they had a shot there.
Yeah, I enjoyed the game for the most part, but like you said, when Brian Scott got put into the game in the fourth quarter, I felt that kind of ruined the vibe of the game. Like, honestly, I thought that there was really pointless to kind of put him in there, I think, because you have 4 other games. If you want to give Brian Scott a full other game, you have 4 other opportunities to do that. But why take Cameron Dukes out when he's playing relatively well against a very good team that's still trying to win? Like, you want to give your backups really good, experience and, game situations. You're playing against a Winnipeg team that wants to win this game. This was a perfect scenario for Cameron Dukes to finish this game and try to get Toronto the victory here, even though it didn't mean anything for them. But it was quality reps that you could have gotten Cameron Dukes, but instead you pull him in the middle of the fourth quarter for a guy that hasn't played, in the league right now. In the league this season, and I don't know. It was just such a weird vibe at the end of that game because Toronto basically just conceded it to Winnipeg, and I thought that for the most part Toronto played very, very well in this game. They came to play, and I thought that they looked really great in the first half, but ultimately I feel like they conceded the game in the fourth quarter by putting in Brian Scott.
Yeah, made me sad here. I love Brian. Brian's been on the show, and obviously tracking him going up there, and there was a lot of things with the XFL and everything else. Evan, what did you make of Brian Scott's first performance this season?
Yeah, well, Brian's been around, and I was very pleased to see him come into the game. I understand it was weird timing, and I understand, it might have not been the right decision, but we haven't seen Brian play since USFL last year, and he only played in a couple games before getting hurt. It's been a long time since he's been on the field, and the fact that he's still around in 2023, with a major pro franchise, one that has the potential to, win a championship, even if he's not starting. I find that to be a very formidable, I guess is the term, accomplishment. A very I remember when he was like the spring league MVP, and that feels like a decade ago now in football.
Two time.
Yes, exactly. So it's been a long time that Brian's been around, but I think the real story here, and again, I'm sure Brian will get another opportunity, hopefully down the stretch here in the next couple weeks. So I know this wasn't his best day, but again, it was only a couple snaps. I'll give him a break, right? And it was weird timing and all that, but the real story here, I think, was Cameron Dukes, and of course, this one was pretty special. Mike Davis, who I work with, in Vegas, he was the guy who, brought Cam Dukes in, to the arena game, and he played in Vegas prior to, going to Toronto. So we were very happy about that, to see him, go up there and get the start. And he's kind of, he's almost, I guess, the poster child in a sense. Like, if you, I'm not trying to make a pitch here to anybody, but it's like, if you develop your game and you take a chance, things like this can happen where you get an opportunity elsewhere and you can play on a higher stage. And, Cam Dukes, in this game, he really impressed. He came out there and against one of the best teams in the league, looked like he could start multiple games and not have a problem. He was definitely, in a position where, you could tell that he had learned throughout the season behind Chad Kelly. And, he was really taking in all the information and using his prior experience in the arena game. Very impressed with what Cameron Dukes did. And I think a lot of other people were impressed as well. On the broadcast, they were saying, this game to some degree, we all viewed this was an automatic win for Winnipeg. And yes, they still got the victory at the end of the game. But for a while, it looked like, Toronto was just going to keep Dukes in there and they were going to roll past Winnipeg. And, the entire Toronto team played very well with him at the helm. So, yeah, I was really impressed, with how that went down. And I feel like, you see, there's too much time left in the season to where I would just take Chad Kelly out of the picture. Like, I think Chad, has to play again, obviously, before, they go to the playoffs. And I hope that goes without saying. But again, in this game proved that, if you need Cam Dukes to play, he'll be there. And, he's going to play in a high capacity. And I think that, if you're Toronto, that makes you feel a bit more comfortable because I think someone mentioned it on TSN. They were saying, the only question that Toronto really had was, who's the backup? Who's the guy that's going to come in if something happens to Kelly during the season? And, obviously it was kind of a, between Dukes and Scott, nobody, really knew. Hell, Ben Holmes was in there at one point, but I can't bring up that name on this show. overall, yeah, I was still very impressed with Toronto, even though Winnipeg got the win. And yeah, I mean, I think that I know that was a lot about quarterbacks, but I mean, we can get into some other parts of the game here. But I'll let you talk first, Reed.
Yeah, Jason, just, it's interesting. I mean, this has been the discussion here for a couple weeks now with Chad Keller and everything else. Toronto, I mean, really kind of almost beating Winnipeg with some of their, and I saw a lot of like online, like, well, they're not resting everyone, or I mean, it's still a football game. I mean, what did you make?
Yeah, I was shocked how intense the Argos were in this game. I mean, yeah, besides the quarterback, I felt like they didn't really rest too many players. I think a couple guys on the defensive side, like Sean Oakman, I think rested for this game, but I thought that they played with a lot of intensity. AJ Ouellette, I think strangely only had the one carry in this game, but it went for a big play. And I thought that the Argos played with a lot of intensity in this game, and I thought they were legitimately trying to win. And that's why I was very confused by their decision in the fourth quarter to bring in Brian Scott. And let me be clear, I'm not ripping on Brian Scott. I'm just saying that I thought that Cameron Dukes deserved to finish that game with how he was playing, and that there were other opportunities to give Brian Scott a full game with the 4 games they have left in their season. So I think, going forward in terms of Chad Kelly, I think that they're going to play him next week, because I think they're going to play him for the home games. I think that's my theory about it, because the fans there deserve to see him play. But I think at the end of the day, I think for a game like this in Winnipeg, I don't think they wanted to show the Bombers too much in terms of their starting quarterback. So I think that's why they decided to do what they did.
Yeah, I like that theory. Yeah, play Chad in the home games. Can you imagine like a full Brian Scott game? The full Brian Scott at the Argos at the helm. We got all these tools here. Evan, anyone else you want to spotlight here before we get out?
Let me take a look. I don't have too many notes on this one. I will say, not that he had, an extremely impressive game, but Deontay McMahon was someone that I, scouted and interviewed. He went to school out here at McNeese State, and he signed with the Argos. I mean, I think he kind of signed with them before he even entertained any other NFL opportunity. I think he just decided that would be the best place to go, given his status, coming from the FCS. But it's nice to see him getting worked in. He was a really impressive player, at the FCS level, one of the best, running backs. And to see him starting to get some work here late in the season for Toronto. He's another one of those guys where it's like, kind of like Brian Scott, like you might have not flashed a lot now, but you've got 4 more weeks to do something, and I'm sure they're going to keep playing him. So that'll be exciting to follow. Maybe we'll talk about some guys on the Winnipeg side of the ball. Yeah, Brady Oliveira. I mean, I think that goes without saying at this point, but 25 carries, 169 yards, averaging nearly 7 yards a carry. I mean, that's an absolute workhorse. That's 25 carries, for that many yards, and you're not even scoring. You're just kind of getting the ball and chugging along for a couple first downs. I mean, that's really good to see. And again, that I think I know some people might not want to hear this if you're not a Winnipeg fan, but that might help him a lot in the playoffs. I think that's almost like a secret weapon, even though we all know how good Brady Oliveira is. But yeah, Reed, I got to say it, man. I know there's this whole BC deal, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think that's probably it in terms of guys from that game. Again, I enjoyed watching it. Obviously, there were some, different faces, but I mean, yeah, there was enough starters in there. I think Toronto, they had a lot of their starting lineup in. I think they just, pulled some guys early, like AJ Ouellette had 1 carry, and then just kind of left after that. So I don't know. Interesting. Again, kind of an interesting tactic. I know we brought it up with, we talked about Hamilton, like the 2 quarterbacks, like, some of these teams, pull some interesting cards out of the hat. And then, yeah, having Brian Scott in there at the end of the game, again, hope to see Brian in a larger capacity, having more success moving forward here over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, ultimately I think that's it.
Well, there you go. We did it. Like I said, big game coming up Friday. Winnipeg going in there. Jason, any other games you want to spotlight before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I will add to Evan's point about, Brady Oliveira being really important for them, because I think with Winnipeg, they like to hit the big play, but they're not necessarily the best in terms of the short range passing game. I think the running game is very important for their pacing of that offense. So I think, Oliveira, very key guy for them going forward.
Yeah, here Elks going into the slaughterhouse of horrors in Toronto. We'll see. And then Hamilton, Saskatchewan. Should be exciting. Like I said, I'll be up at the BC game. Should be a good show this week. So obviously tracking the XFL, USFL stuff. I think Dan Kaplan's going to come on. I think we're going to get him on, giving his thoughts about that. And then I reached out to a couple of CFL guys trying to get one of the CFL panelists has been avoiding me all season. We've been going back and forth trying to get it scheduled. So maybe we can get that pinned down, or else send another former player another invite to maybe come back on. So appreciate it. Like I said, Jason's doing his other stuff on the channel, and I think that's it, unless anyone has anything else. All right, thanks guys, we'll see you next time. And where's my thing here? All right, take care.